Okay, welcome. We are here tonight to talk about Oiler athletics. So if you're interested in being an Oiler athlete, you're in the right spot. We are going to start the agenda tonight with NCAA eligibility, admissions acceptance versus NCAA eligibility, transfer students and NCAA eligibility, national letters of intent and athletic scholarships. And then Katie here is going to go over a day and a week in the life of a student athlete and how she balanced academics and athletics, time commitment, and travel. So I'm going to let everyone here introduce themselves, and feel free at any point tonight during this broadcast to type your questions in on the Google Plus page here or on Twitter. If you wanted to tweet at UFinley using hashtag AskUF, that's hashtag ASKUF, and we're at UFinley. So go ahead and send those in if you have questions. We will answer those live on air. So Greg, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I'm Greg Gilbert. I'm Assistant Athletic Director here at the University of Findlay. Been here now going on my second stint of approximately 16 years, and I handle the NCAA eligibility, our compliance, and also the scheduling of our athletic facilities.
Good evening, I am Brandi, Laurita. I'm Assistant Athletic Director, Senior Women Administrator, and I handle National Letter of Intent, NCAA scholarshiping, and various other roles in the athletic department.
I'm Katie Burke. I'm the Graduate Assistant in the Athletic Department. I'm an occupational therapy major, and I played soccer here.
Okay, so Greg, we're going to go ahead and start with you if you'd like. Eligibility Center, and we will take questions as they come in.
One of the first things a student athlete has to do, either if they want to be recruited for Division I or NCAA Division II, is to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center. And I believe that website is www.ncaaeligibilitycenter.com. I'm sorry, .org with that. Most of your guidance counselors and high school coaches can help you with that. With the NCAA Eligibility Center, they've determined what's going to be your initial freshman eligibility for Division II school. And both NCAA Division I and NCAA Division II have two different standards that are both very similar. So you do need to kind of focus on what do you think is going to be your best level to participate, and then are you going to be able to be eligible for that level of competition. With the NCAA Eligibility Center, as I mentioned, they're going to determine what your eligibility is as an incoming freshman. The University of Findlay or any other institution that you would go to is going to do for acceptance. Most of the times they're going to be very similar, but yet they're different. Because for NCAA Division II, there's a national standard to be eligible. For each college that's a Division II school, each has their own acceptance standards. So there's a difference from Findlay to the other, the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, which is what the University of Findlay is a member of. So you do need to realize that there are going to be similar, and just because you may be eligible doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be accepted to Findlay and or another institution, but they're very closely related. First, just because you are accepted to an institution, including the University of Findlay, we do have to verify your eligibility center.
And how about transfer students and NCAA eligibility? How is that different for that student type?
They, instead of looking at for incoming freshmen, they will look at your high school transcript eligibility status. We will look at your transfer transcript from the institution that you came to the University of Findlay, whether it's a 4-year school, whether it's a 2-year school or community college. Each of those different schools, 4-year level or Division II or a 2-year college, have different standards that we do have to evaluate. A lot of times you may hear the word transfer or the word transferable hours because we will look at did you take enough credit hours to be eligible at one institution? Is that going to allow you to be eligible here at the University of Findlay? When you are a transfer and you do talk to a college coach here at the University of Findlay, oftentimes they're going to work a transcript, whether it's an official copy of your transcript or if you can at least provide an unofficial copy. That allows us to be able to evaluate it and see exactly where you stand, or more importantly, is there something you need to do that or term before you transfer to the University of Findlay. And like with the high school students, for transfer students, just because you may become eligible at the D2 level, which is a standard across the country for all D2 schools, the acceptance level for each individual institution at the Division II level, Findlay versus other schools, may be a little bit different. So we have to look at the two. Usually they work very closely together, but there are some nooks and crannies we got to be careful of this to make sure that everybody's in the correct to be here at the University of Findlay.
Katie, did you find the eligibility process, the NCAA eligibility process, to be pretty easy, or how was that process for you?
I thought it was fairly easy. It's nice that it is a lot of questions, so at first it's overwhelming when you look at all that you need to fill out, but you can come back to them. So it is nice that when you have a little bit of time, you can fill it out, or if you have questions, you are able to go ask somebody before the full process.
Okay, Brandi, you said you work with the National Letters of Intent. Can you tell us a little more about that and how those work, and then also about the athletic scholarships?
Sure. The National Letter of Intent, or as most of our coaches talk about, is the NLI. The NLI is actually the only binding document that prospective student athletes can sign to come to an institution. The NLI is product of the Eligibility Center, so it is something that we will process with them to make sure that you, one, have registered with the Eligibility Center, and that two, that we have transcripts here on campus from you. We can't send an NLI without you being registered and without transcripts here on campus. So those are two important things that, as you go through that process and are thinking of signing a National Letter of Intent, to make sure that you have completed those things, and that the Eligibility Center, it's great if you can get your transcripts there. You've got your process done with them and your transcripts are there. But if not, that your transcripts here on campus and that you have registered with the Eligibility Center. The NLI must be accompanied by a financial aid agreement. So to sign a National Letter of Intent, you do have to be receiving athletic scholarship from the University of Findlay. You may see other things, or if you are coming as a walk-on student athlete, we will send a letter of commitment that we are happy to have you. We do have lots of walk-on student athletes, but to actually sign a National Letter of Intent, you do need to be receiving an athletic scholarship. Athletic scholarships are 1 year renewable. We cannot offer multi-year scholarships, so any athletic scholarship that you're offered at any Division II institution, whether it's the University of Findlay or another institution, is a 1 year scholarship that the end of the academic year can be renewed, increased, decreased, or canceled depending on your situation. We always tell our student athletes that being a student athlete is a privilege, and the things that you choose to do or not to do can affect that privilege. So making good choices, not only as you prepare to come to the University of Findlay, but once you get here, can affect that athletic scholarship. So remember that it's a 1 year scholarship. Talk about it with the coach that you're working with, and make sure that you have a plan for the entire time that you're here. But do know that that scholarship offer can only be for 1 year. Not something we choose to do. We'd love to plan more ahead, but the NCAA does require that we only offer 1 year scholarships, and then that we can, at the end of the academic year, work with that scholarship and renew those scholarships.
We do have a question. Zoe would like to know, they've been talking with the swimming coach and would like to know when should I get my transcripts into the NCAA?
The transcripts into the NCAA Eligibility Center, there's 2 time frames to work with. The very first time, it should be after their junior year, so that at least a 6 semester transcript can be sent there, so that it can be that they will do an initial evaluation or preliminary evaluation with that. If Zoe has just registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center, probably the first semester would be close to being completed in the high school. Once she's done with the first semester, then if she hasn't had a transcript sent before, I would recommend a 7 semester transcript, which is midway through her senior year, be sent. And then the second time, and the most important time that is needed, is upon graduation, because they will need that transcript for, one, proof of graduation, and then to also verify all the other preliminary courses that they had evaluated. Along with that question for Zoe, with the transcript, is the NCAA Eligibility Center also needs the ACT and SAT test scores. Now, a lot of times those will be listed on the transcript. However, the policy of the NCAA Eligibility Center is not to accept the test scores that are on the transcripts. They have to be sent directly from the testing institution, whether it's the ACT or SAT. So that's another thing for them to do. What also helps by sending a preliminary transcript is an evaluation will not be done until a test score is there. So if we see if the transcript's there and the test score is not there, we can encourage the test score to be sent, or vice versa. If the test score has been sent but not the transcript, it helps we'll work to help to marry the two together so that both the student athlete and the coach has an idea where the eligibility is heading.
And just a recommendation with sending test scores, if you do them when you are taking the test, I think you have up to 5, if I'm correct.
4 or 5.
4 or 5 that they'll send for free. So make sure you put the Eligibility Center as one of those options so you don't have to pay a fee to send it later, because they do need those test scores.
And that code number is 9999. Just putting a plug in there for that. That makes both the coach's job, my job, and also your high school guidance counselor's job easier. And one of the nice things about transcripts now that can be received by the NCAA Eligibility Center is a lot of high schools can send them through e-files, DocuFind. There's some other avenues of companies, vendors that do that. So before, everything had to be either mailed or overnight mailed, and by sending them electronically, it really speeds up the process.
She's also wondering, what is the best way to know if I am the type of athlete the swim team would want?
Hopefully she's been talking to Coach Makepeace, and he's a pretty upfront guy. So if he's chatting with you and talking about your future, I would assume you that would fit the University of Findlay. I think it's important that when you're at any school in the University of Findlay, that you're not only looking at maybe the swim program, but that you're looking at the institution. We want happy students here, and we want, I think the most important part is that you are a successful student. And then if you're a successful student, you can be a successful student athlete. So looking at the institution as a whole, making sure that it's the right fit for you, the resident's life or what else is going on campus is really important. And so if all of those things fit together, then I think that you'll find what's the right fit program.
Well, speaking of successful student athletes, Katie, why don't you tell us what it takes to be a successful student athlete? Maybe a day in the life of a student athlete.
Well, it's very busy, and it depends on in season. When the women's soccer team comes in, we always meet with Brandi and have our compliance meetings, make sure all our paperwork is filled out, and then we start right in with team camp. We have like a fitness test in the morning, and then we have a practice. So it's basically a lot of you wake up, and then you go to practice, and then you eat, and then you have a meeting at night, and then you go to bed in our it's very intense, but when you come in as a freshman student athlete, you're very excited. And every year after that, you get to know people very quickly, and you're usually just ready to get started. You're ready to have your first. And during the first week of classes, we would always have 2 a day. So we'd wake up in the morning, and then we'd go to class. And that got to be, you really knew when you hit your limits and when you had to go to bed very well. So I think it's just making sure that you organize your time appropriately. During the season, you do have to make sure that you're talking with your coaches, because you have to have your travel plans. You always have an absence letter and what days you're going to be, so that you give those to your teachers. Don't wait for your teachers to ask for them, because that's never good. And if you stay in contact, the professors here on campus are very nice, and they look at student athletes if they're willing. And if you stay ahead of your work, they really do make time for you and really help you out with your schoolwork and things that you're going to be missing.
Okay.
One of the we talked about whether you're in season or out of season. The first part she was talking about was preseason, and obviously there's no classes going on, so it's for the students to be on athletics, for football, men and women's cross country, men and women's soccer. All here at the University of Findlay, all will come in prior to school starting to a week beforehand. And then once school starts, they would be in their championship segment where they're playing their games. When you're going to miss some games or miss some classes, you have to let the professors know that. Also, the other sports that you may not consider to be fall sports, such as baseball, golf, tennis, they do have non-championship segments in the fall. It's broken here. So for some high school students who are used to playing one sport in the fall and another in the spring, that opportunity becomes very challenging at a collegiate institution because there's the expectations for that one sport is not just during the traditional segment, but also the non-traditional, non-championship segment. And then when that period is done, you do have some out-of-season time frame where you can just do some lifting and conditioning to keep yourself in tune for when your next segment arises.
Okay. So don't forget, guys, if you would like to ask questions, feel free to type them onto the Google Hangout here on Google+, or you can tweet us at UFinley using hashtag AskUF. So let's get those questions in, and we can answer those live for you. We are going to also talk tonight about, the student's perspective and answering questions you might have. Some other questions we're going to talk about right now. Katie, if you can tell us maybe about the program that you chose to come in for and how you feel that's integrated, or how that integrated in with your life as a student athlete. So if you can talk more about the OT program. I know you came in for OT, our occupational therapy program, and how that married well with the sports team that you chose, soccer.
I chose in either the end of my sophomore year or my junior year of high school that I was interested in occupational therapy. So I came to the health professions visit day at Finley, I believe in February of my junior year of high school. And also that time is when I talked to the soccer coach. I met with him for the first time. And there he suggested that I would go to their summer camp. And so that was kind of the way that I went about being recruited to come to Finley. And then after that, I continued on with occupational therapy. And within occupational therapy, you are accepted in your junior years when you apply. When you apply your sophomore year, accepted in your junior year. Now I know they have a freshman admit. So I think they accept 10 freshmen for each class, and you can be accepted in your freshman year and then also start your junior year. And that has kind of worked out nicely because I was able to develop my own schedule and knew what I needed to do as a student athlete into the graduate program. So it was nice that my undergraduate classes that weren't as demanding as my graduate classes were, I already knew what I needed to do to be successful both in the classroom and on the soccer field. So it was nice that I could start my graduate classes a little bit later. And one nice thing about when I got into the graduate program, we didn't have classes on Friday. And in the soccer program, we play on Fridays and on Sundays. So that worked nicely that when we were traveling on Fridays, I wasn't always missing classes. But in the occupational therapy program, we had 32 students in our class. So the professors really knew who I was. We knew them on a personal level. And that is also the case in undergraduate classes, but it made it a whole lot nicer that when I would have to miss class, that they knew that I would do work outside of class or ahead of time, just so that even if I would be outside of class, I would still be doing work and wouldn't be behind in my schoolwork.
Well, Zoe has another question. It looks like she might be interested in the pre-physical therapy program. And I wasn't sure if maybe Brandi or Greg, if you've worked with students who have gone into the PT program, she is wondering how doable it is with swimming. So if she was going to be on the swim team, how doable might the PT program be?
I think that if she is willing to put in the time and the effort, it definitely can happen. We have many student athletes on swimming and on other programs that can do both. Katie's a great example of somebody that went through the pre-professional programs and succeeded. We have lots of student athletes that are PT majors. I can think of a handful of them that come to mind that are succeeding in both their athletics and academics. So it's definitely possible. I think it goes back to time management and communication, being able to let everybody know what page you're on, both your coaches and your professors. I think is really important in making sure that everybody understands the demands that you're under and what needs to happen. I think if you do those things, and Katie can probably attest to that, in the PT program, you definitely can make it happen.
I will say, the most important thing I think Brandi said was time management. Because you can, if you put your mind to it, you're going to be in a position to be able to succeed. And as long as you take care of your academics first, and participate in athletics second, and then enjoy the atmosphere of the school third, in that order, you'll be successful no matter what major you take. I can say personally, my last 3 graduate assistants were all physical therapy majors, and they were members of the track team, so they were competing, some in cross country in the fall, indoor track during January and February, and outdoor track March and April. So it's a very long season, and they were successful with it. So it comes down to the individual putting their mind to it to work to make it happen. I believe with men and women swimming right now, Coach Makepeace has it set up where on certain days they have 2 practices because of class situations where student maybe can't make the typical normal practice at 3. He has an earlier practice to accommodate the student athlete. It's a little bit more hard, particularly your larger team sports, manageable if with the students willing to put their mind to it.
And my roommate was a physical therapy major, and the one thing with physical therapy, you enter in your senior year, so that gives you a year to kind of prepare and know exactly what you need. And it is with time and isn't as flexible as when you're an undergraduate. You don't get to pick your class times. You have one class that you need to go to. So kind of being open with your coaches on not only when you have class, but like with practice times, you need to really and just say, this is when I have class and I can make it to practice at this time. It goes both ways of both letting your teachers know and your coaches know, so that you are always in the best position, both in the classroom and in your case in the pool.
Brandi, it sounds like this question might be for you. Can you academic scholarships? This is also from Zoe. She's wondering.
You can. We are fortunate that we can package students and student athletes in particular well, that you can have academic aid, and you can also throw in any type of grants that you get or institutional aid. So we can, and if you able to give you that full package of what it will look like, and then working with Coach Makepeace to see if there's, you definitely can have both types of aid and admissions and financial to make sure that you're getting the best options for to make it feasible to come to the University of Findlay.
So what would be one of the first things that a student would need to do if they're interested? A student comes fresh to the University of Findlay, they know they're interested in Findlay, they know maybe they're interested in, let's say, track or cross country. What would be one of the first things that they should do to make that first contact point?
I think probably the best way is to contact a coach and find out the best way to do that. I believe initially a lot of them is probably through email, through the athletic department website. We have email addresses and also phones. Typically because of our coaches' responsibilities and they have within their jobs, they're not always sitting at their desk to answer a phone. They do gather emails and do respond, and a lot of them also do work very closely with the admissions who are interested in a particular sport. You've contacted an admissions counselor, you're coming on a visit. They will work to meet with you, or is there an additional way for that contact to be made?
On the athletics website under the athletic info tab, and then there's a whole tab for prospective student athletes. If you click on that tab, it has lots of information that will be helpful for you, along with some athletic questionnaires. So if you click on that, many of our teams have specific questionnaires of things that times or records or stats or whatever the sport specific information they would, specific things that they want that you can fill out online, that will go directly to the coach and can get that started. Another thing I think is important, that if you're looking at Findlay or any other school, because that's going to have to happen, and no matter where you choose to go, make sure it's started, because as Katie said, there's lots of questions. So make sure you get that started, because really from our end, with athletic scholarships or national letter of intent, a lot of things that we need, you've got to be in the eligibility center. So make sure you start that process.
Yeah.
Two other things I would add is one, contact the University of Findlay. They may have a connection. They may have had other athletes from their programs that have been to the University of Findlay, so they can help start the ball rolling. And as Brandi mentioned about the NCAA Eligibility Center, it's needed to determine your initial eligibility for incoming freshmen. Athletic scholarships can only be administered if you're registered with the Eligibility Center, so that's very important. And also the third component of the NCAA Eligibility Center, which I did not mention earlier, is to determine your amateur. Consider yourself a professional athlete before you had come to the University of Findlay. It's not too often that it affects incoming freshmen, but if you're a transfer or have been out of school for a little bit of time, sometimes there might have been some things that you may not have thought would have triggered to consider you a professional or semi-pro. That does. So it's important that you get that information, answer the questions. As Katie said, there's a lot of them to answer, and let them kind of, and then once we're notified, then we can help the student athlete and the coach, see exactly where they need to stand to put them in the best possible position to be an Oiler.
When I started looking at Findlay, I put together a player profile that had my years, like senior, junior, sophomore, freshman, and then any awards that I was given in any of the sports I played, not only soccer, but I included my other sports also that I played in high school. And I attached that with the initial email that I sent to the women's soccer coach at the time. That just kind of gave them a little background of who I was, where I was coming from, and kind of my experience in soccer. And so when I attached that, then from there we had set up a time that we would meet when I came on my first visit to Findlay. So I would recommend doing that. I had my high school soccer coach help me put that together, and kind of things that he had seen players include and what to include, what not to include. So I would recommend putting one of those together, that when you make your first contact, or even after if you've already sent your first email, just go ahead and send that to coaches. They kind of like to see a background of things that you're involved in and any awards that you have won in any of the sports that you're playing.
We've also seen a lot in the recent past of, you all have YouTube channels and all of those social media things. So any video that you have of you playing, being able for the coach to see that is a great way to get the conversation started. I would recommend not a highlight film, but just some actual footage of you playing your sport. Everybody has highlights, and a lot of our coaches would much rather see maybe a snippet of 10 minutes of a game, or an entire race, or something in kind of a bigger picture, so they can assess you in lots of aspects and not just a highlight film. So if you've got a YouTube channel or you've got some video, including that in your communication with coaches would be really helpful to start the conversation.
One other thing I do know, some coaches do have access to different recruiting services, and some sports are a little bit more prevalent than others. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more, can be more costly to the student, to the incoming student, because they have to register for it, provide the information. But if it's the cost benefit that it gets you the college that you want, gets you a good financial aid package, and leads to you to being a graduate, then obviously the effort was definitely worth it. So again, there's a lot of them out there in your college or your high school coaches, guidance counselors. They can have some access to that information to see what is the one that's probably most prevalent for your sport.
Katie, is there anything that you would have done differently to help prepare you for college sports?
I would have started the summer workouts that they gave us before the 1st of August. I always was a 3-sport athlete in high school, so I was in fairly decent shape, but I didn't take the weight room program seriously enough. And then when I came in my freshman year, I ended up with an injury because I don't think my body was ready for the physical demands of playing a collegiate sport. So that is one thing that then in the following seasons I took more seriously, is that I didn't wait to start that summer program. So when they say to start, that you need to do this conditioning program, I would start it on the days that it says that you need to start it, and I would do what they say that you need to do to come in shape, and not only to make fitness tests, but just that your body is ready, because it is physically a lot more physically demanding than what a high school sport is. So just so that you are healthy and can continue to play. So that was one of the only things that I would do differently.
Something I know that may have come up before, not here tonight, but maybe a question that a student may have had. Can they complete or compete in organized sports between high school graduation and before enrolling in the University of Findlay? So if they want to compete in some kind of organized sport after high school graduation and before enrolling in University of Findlay, is that something that they can do?
Yes, it is with limitations. By NCAA bylaws, you have what's referred to as a grace year from the time you graduate high school till you enroll at the University of Findlay. You can kind of compete in any type of organized competition that you want. But usually once after that first year, then you do need to enroll. Any type of organized competition there could jeopardize your initial eligibility, the amount of eligibility you would have remaining by going to any NCAA Division I or Division II school. Most student athletes graduate May or June and then start college in the fall in August or September. A lot will play, maybe some club soccer if they continue on, play Acme baseball, Legion baseball. That eligibility, it's organized, but they're, it's a continuous from the time they graduated high school in the spring to starting in the fall at college. That typically will not affect their eligibility.
The only thing I would caution is if you're in offers prizes, running or something that you can win monetary prizes, just to be careful about that and make sure you're asking questions before you're accepting any gifts to make sure that you're not doing something that would jeopardize that initial eligibility.
Might students have to compete nationally or internationally in some of our sports, our teams?
Well, the motto of the GLIAC is it's the conference where champions compete, and the conference at a high level at a lot of the national championships. In several of our sports, last year, Ben Sargent was the national champion in wrestling. Adam Walter won 2 national, maybe 3 national championships in individual sports in the sport of track and field. So our athletes do compete nationally. In 2009, the University of Findlay men's basketball team won the national championship. They've regularly made the regional tournament. So our teams do compete at a high level, and because we have both team sports and your individual sports like swimming, wrestling, there's times that if the team doesn't always necessarily go to that higher level, you can, as an individual, be able to qualify as well.
What about networking opportunities? Have you seen or have you had, Katie, any really great networking opportunities as far as meeting your career goals through your team or through working with anyone here in the athletics department? I know being a part of a team anywhere, you get those networking opportunities, but how might that helped your career goals, or if you've seen anyone who has flourished in their career goals?
Well, one way is becoming the graduate assistant. By being on the soccer team, I was able to become the graduate assistant for the athletic department. So that has also been nice as I am continuing taking classes, but I'm no longer playing soccer. But I've seen a lot of people that they have made connections and they have internships during the summer when we're not here for soccer. But I think that now it's a lot of who you know. So the more people that you become involved with, which by playing a sport here, you know a lot of people on campus, and a lot of people on campus know a lot of people. So that if you kind of take time to get to know people, then they really look to help you out, and they would try to make connections for you if you're looking for even a job in the off season. I know a lot of people have looked for jobs, and because they know somebody on campus and they have picked up a job in the rec center or something like that. So I think that being involved in things on campus, not only athletically, but in other student organizations, that you really put yourself in a good position to gain even employment after graduation, but also internships and just employment while you're still at Findlay.
I would say from my perspective, I can't count the number of times that I've got calls for references for student athletes or somebody will call and say, I've got this job opportunity, do you know anyone? And I've had the opportunity to recommend some of our student athletes for great positions where they went on in their major and succeeded. And not only athletic majors, but we'll get an email from a former student athlete who's succeeding that says, I need somebody to come work for me. Who do you know? Who's somebody that's graduating that could be a great asset to my company or my program? And we are able to provide them lots of great names. So I think that from my perspective, student athletes who have taken the time to be involved in organization on campus and done community service or volunteered for things and built relationships with those of us in administration we've been able to help them find opportunities. And if they do want to work in athletics, to be able to make a call to a colleague and say, hey, we've got this great person that would really maybe fit the opening you have. I think it happens more often than I ever thought it would.
One thing that Brandi mentions about community service and volunteering, a lot of our athletic teams do that on campus and also within the community. And they get to see, they may recognize you as a football player, as a volleyball player, as a basketball player, but they also if they get to see you do something outside your realm, and it makes a difference for them, it puts you that much more positive light, and also those within your whole program, because they can say, this is what the baseball team did for me. This is what the football team did for me. So it helps put everybody in a positive light, and it opens up some doors and creates people to be a little bit more open-minded to, you're not just an athlete. You're a student athlete, and you're a student, and you possess something that can be very beneficial to them.
I can think of a specific student we have on campus right now that was volunteering and happened to be volunteering with an executive from town. And by the time they were done, he said, you know what, you've always got a place at our company. And just from spending an hour with these people and doing nice things for somebody else, the student athlete's got opportunities that are, great, and something that he never thought he would make that connection from just volunteering. So those opportunities are out there. And as Katie said, it comes a lot to who you know and the impressions you've made on people, more than maybe what you know at the end of the day.
Being an athlete is one more avenue that you have to know people that maybe another regular student athlete wouldn't have, because it's one less organization that they're involved with. So it definitely can be a positive for you.
Earlier, how to get in contact with a coach and email, call. Zoe is wondering what might be the best way to get the coach to notice you. So aside from maybe emailing or calling, much, or what might not be too little. She's very interested in coming here to swim.
Okay.
Coach Makepeace.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll say two things. One, you want to be good. Times in swimming that are relative to what the swimmers in your event are doing, because we want athletes that want to come here to compete and to win from that standpoint. You also have to realize that our coaches, Coach May, women's program. So he, like a lot of our other coaches, may have dual responsibilities. Their number one during season, their number one responsibility is to make sure athletes have a positive experience. So they may be getting, a lot of emails from other student recruits that they're not always able to answer right away. Each coach has a different level of, they want to hear from you once. It could be every 2 weeks, or, we're getting ready for our conference tournament. We're getting ready for regionals. We're getting ready for nationals. I'm not going to be available until after that. So you just got to kind of feel out what's going to be the best realm with that. And the way is that they are very interested in you as a student athlete, but they don't know one, so that you don't want them to be in contact with you. So it's a fine line. As Katie said, talking to your coaches to let them know what they expect from you and what you can expect.
Time of year than not to visit campus and maybe meet with the coaches. I don't know if Zoe, if you haven't visited campus yet, definitely visit campus, and you might be able to get in to speak with Coach Makepeace one-on-one. But is there a better time of year to come and visit if you want to meet with a coach?
I think it all depends on the sport in itself. What are their heavy times and what are the times easy for that. Sometimes in season is a little bit harder for coaches because they're focused out of season. If They may be on the road recruiting, so they may contact you at the school. Other times it's a little bit easier for you to come to visit the school because they have more time about practices from that standpoint. Katie brought up a great point earlier about coming to the Health Professions Day. I know a lot of coaches do work with admissions on their, fall preview day, the spring preview day, different days throughout the year, and also at those days, info fairs, and the athletics also always has a table at one of those that we can provide some. You haven't made an initial contact, we can start the ball rolling in that direction.
I think another tip would be to make it easy for them to see you and get to know you about the videos, or if you're going to be competing somewhere close, something that makes it, I don't want to say convenient, but something that makes it an ease of access to see you and get to know you, I think is really helpful. If they don't know you're going to be in Findlay competing against Findlay High School or, somewhere local, and letting them know what your schedule is and when you might be around, and giving them some options, I think would really be helpful so they can see you and see you compete.
Well, we're going to go ahead and process here. So we'll go on here for about maybe 5-10 more minutes. If you do have questions, feel free to ask last minute questions now. You can tweet us at UFinley using hashtag AskUF, or right here on our Google Plus wall, you can add those questions. So I kind of want to go through and just maybe let you guys add some last minute comments, maybe recommendations for students who are looking at coming to Findlay and looking at athletics. What might your #1 piece of advice be for them? Someone who's fresh in high school and maybe is just starting out looking at colleges.
I guess I would go back to the initial thought with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Coaches are going to want to know, are you going to be eligible to be able to compete for them? And that also goes along with, will you be acceptable? So for a lot of times, the first thing a coach will provide me a recruit, I'll verify with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Are you registered? Do you have a transcript there, a 6-semester, 7-semester transcript that we can do a preliminary evaluation? And also the ACT or SAT test score there. I think by doing that early, it also shows the coach that you're committed to being a college athlete. Okay, because it is a commitment to be that way, and by doing those things that show you're going to take care of your business ahead of time, and it'll make it easier for you to make the adjustment to being a college athlete.
I would say my advice would be to make sure you're applying to the school. That sounds crazy, but a lot of times student athletes in particular will think, I've talked to coach and I have all my paperwork in with coach, and forget that you've also got to go through the admissions process here at the university. So make sure you follow through with that process. You're in communication with your admissions counselor and making sure that you're going through those steps and knowing that athletics is kind of an on top of that process to go through. I think that's important. We sometimes get really far down the road with a student athlete and then realize, oh, they haven't even applied. So make sure that you're doing that process. It's a pretty easy process for our admissions process, and make sure you're doing that. I would also say that it's really never too soon to start looking. So if you are a freshman or sophomore, sending coach initial information. We are getting commits from student athletes earlier and earlier, not only here, but at the Division II level across the country. So it's never too early. And the same lines, it's never too late. So if you are late in the process and you haven't talked to coach, there may not be athletic scholarship available, but there may be an opportunity for you to be on the team and work towards that. So wherever you're at in the process, just make sure you're reaching out and making sure you're completing all the processes.
I would recommend that when you look at schools, don't only look at just what athletic team you want to go to. Make sure that you're going to be happy at the school that you're at and in the major that you're in. When I went to look at school, I wanted to know how far away I thought I would be able to be away from home. And Findlay was a good distance away from home. And then I looked at the majors that they provided in occupational therapy, fit, and then I knew I wanted to play soccer. So all three of those lined up perfectly for me, and Findlay couldn't be a better fit for me. I have been very happy. So I think that you need to look at exactly what you want to be, not only as an athlete or a student, but just as a person. Is it going to be where you think you're going to fit in well? Because you're not going to be successful if you're not happy in all three of those areas. So I think that just make sure that you really look at where you think you're going to be the happiest, and don't just settle for something. If you really want to achieve something great, make sure that you really go after that, because with hard work, you really can.
Good. Well, I want to thank all three of you guys for being here tonight. Thanks for taking the time. If you would like to schedule a visit, you can definitely do that from our website. And if you would like to apply, go ahead and do that as well. Our admissions office is readily available to answer any questions you might have about visiting campus or about applying to the university. So if you go to finley.edu, you can have all your questions answered there with contact information. We are going to be sending this video out as well to anyone who was on the initial email list. So if you received an invitation via email to this Hangout, you will receive a link to the recording as well, and you can watch this again. If you would like your email added there, just please let us know. We can send it your way. Any questions, feel free to give us a call or email us, and I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us tonight. See you later.